Alrighty, guys, welcome to tonight's charting session. Hopefully, you guys are having a good day so far. It is August 14th, Monday. Hopefully, everyone's doing well. We're going to jump into tonight's session. So, the plan for tonight is going over the trades that we took. I took one trade today on NQ, it was a loss, and then that CL trade that I alerted, unfortunately, I didn't get filled, but and a lot of you guys took it and it ended up banking off of it. So, we're going to go over both trades. Why I took it, why my entry was, and then we'll go over kind of my bias that I went for today, and then we'll go over my bias going into tomorrow as well. So first thing, starting off, just looking at NQ, in last night's charting session, this was the area that we marked out and that I wanted to see get rejected. So there was two areas. I was looking at this buy side level here, and I was looking at this 1 hour fair value gap with this high stacked on right here, and this was the buy side that I was looking. So going into the morning, there was actually I actually want to look back and see if there was a short setup right here in the morning. There was. This would have been a really nice, again, this is pre-market, so I wouldn't really probably take this, but this would have worked. This is where you get that break of structure, displacing a downside, that pull back to fair value gap after sweeping that level. You can see we ended up selling off nicely. But after that, going into this morning, that gave me a more bearish bias going into the morning, expecting to want to see lower prices. Again, we see a lot of displacement to the downside. We're very close to taking this low. I'm probably expecting to see lower. So what was I watching? Normally, when we get a lot of volume like this, I want to see a pullback to a bigger time frame fair value gap. And then I look to zoom into smaller time frames to validate, a short bias to get in I just said pickpocket, to nitpick, sorry, a 1 minute entry that's going to be more probable. So 15 minute, this is what I was looking at going into the open. I was looking to have a short bias, but I wanted to see more confirmation. So what's an internal model we can trade? I want to see buy side being swept. I want to see displacement back down, rejection off a bigger time frame PD array, and look to take a 1 minute fair value gap. So number one, I have my bigger time frame PD array. We have this 15-minute bearish fair value gap. I'm looking to see this hold and then sell off to this sell side level. I zoom in. Going down to this 1 minute right here, we actually have this buy side. Again, our internal buy side's now in. We come up in the morning. We end up sweeping this, and then we get that nice big move to the downside right here, that nice selling candle creating that fair value gap. This, to me, is an A setup. I'm totally fine taking a loss on this. We got really nice setup here. I'm totally fine taking a loss on this. Again, we get the break of structure, pull back, enter short, and then we ended up running through, showing that the market wants to go higher to hunt whatever that external buy side liquidity was. So after this, we ended up continuing to run up, and pretty much after that, we ended up chopping a lot of the rest of the day. I saw a lot of you guys later in the PM just decided to not step away and recognize where action wants to go. Again, the reason I got off pretty early this morning is because when market does this, right, I know that my bias most of the time is, I would say 85% of the time or 80% of the time, 90% of the time, somewhere around there, my bias is always, it's right. And I know that. So when I see the market flipping on me and showing that something else, and it's hard to read what the draw on liquidity is, just learn to step away. Learn to step away from the market, right? Especially when we're in an area where we're a little bit confused, right? We're slowing down. Markets are just running. I have no desire to force any trade, to try to make back a loss, to try to do anything. If the market is not going to provide you with quality and you're confused on what the draw is or whatever it is, don't trade. It's as simple as that. It's just having the discipline in growing where you can actually recognize that and say, hey, I probably shouldn't trade right now. And that's what I ended up doing. So after that first loss, markets ended up coming up. We ended up sweeping this internal level right here. Again, faking out the people going short because the actual real draw on liquidity was higher. Going on a bigger time frame, that high. No really displacement to the downside. We end up coming up, and then finally in that 1 hour fair value gap that we were talking about in last night's charting session as well. So let's take a look at, I do want to look back and see on NQ. I think we formed, really no displacement to the downside here. We don't really have a close below this. Let's see if there was maybe a short model here. I want to look at the 1 minute and see if there was maybe an entry. Yeah, I wouldn't look to have taken shorts here, and the reason why is because we didn't get that rejection, right? Again, if we have this kind of time frame model where I'm looking at a 5 minute and we get 5 minute break of structure to the downside and then we pull back, I need to see 1 minute validation for me to enter long or enter short, right? There's no reason for me to enter short when we get no displacement out of this range, right? Once we come up here, the only way I'm entering short in this area is when I get a 1 minute candle to the downside, big displacement, and I get a fair value gap. That's the only way I can take shorts after rejecting that bigger time frame fair value gap, right? So this one ended up getting ran through again, showing that the price is higher. We end up creating relative equal highs up here, and then this gets ran in the afternoon session and then continues to the upside. So today was kind of choppy. We got a little bit of a morning move to the upside and then kind of just consolidated the rest of the day in this little area. So a lot of traders probably got chopped up in this. Let's take a look at that CL trade. So the CL trade was an A+ setup, I would say. Probably more, I would say A, not A+. But looking at CL at the time, we have these 4 stacked equal highs up here. That is super, super clean, showing that this is the clear buy side level. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 exact equal highs up here. We know about equal highs. Most of the time, they're going to act as a magnet, clear buy side level, and we want to look to see if we can get a model targeting that area. So looking at CL, first thing I want to look at is that 1 hour. You can see that we put a low in here, and we end up sweeping this. We put another low, and we come up, form these equal highs, put another low in. Notice that we have no break to the downside, right? There is no displacement. Notice we sweep this low here, no displacement, bounces. Come down, sweep this low here, no displacement lower, bounces. What do I expect? Probably go back to buy side just like this, right? So I zoom in. I need to see confirmation. What am I looking for? Displacement to the upside and a pullback to a bigger time frame fair value gap. That is when I zoom in and I look for a 1 minute entry. So we get sell side swept right here on a 15 minute. That's when I zoom in to maybe a 5 minute or a 1 minute. What now do I wait for? I wait for that 1 minute, this range to come back to discount. So now I have this whole range here. Wait for us to pull back to discount right here. Okay, now this is where I can start looking for an entry, right? But I'm not automatically looking to take longs here just yet. I need to see displacement now back to the upside, validating my long bias, validating that possible long. You can see we came down, bounced off this 1 minute here. And then right here is where we took that long. Boom, we get displacement, big move, respecting this fair value gap, respecting that long bias and that bigger time frame model. Wait for this pullback, and then this was the long entry that I alerted, targeting those equal highs, and we got a beautiful run targeting right up to those highs. So that was the CL trade. A lot of you guys took that, banked on that. Unfortunately, I missed my entry on this, which I'm okay with because we ended up, if at least some of you guys take the trade, then I'm okay with it. But any questions on those two trades so far? What time frames are usually good? I use every time frame. I use every time frame to overlap my bias. Only trade I took today, been getting easier to take less trades, which feels good. Awesome, brother. Let's check it out. I think we formed SMT at that high, right? Yeah. Your original entry, I think this is a little bit late. The best entry possible here would be here, right? Because once you have SMT at the highs, or you're taking the sweep, this would be the entry, because this is when you get that initial displacement, you get that break of structure, and then this is where you get that fair value gap. So this would have been the best entry. For me, this is a little bit late, but you had a loose enough stop to take advantage of it. But again, that dwindles the RR. This only looks like probably 1.5, maybe 2. Probably 1.5 area. But not a bad trade whatsoever. Don't you have to wait for a reaction first? Not if you have SMT. If you have SMT at this highs, which we did, all you need is this is the reaction. Once you get displacement to the downside, because again, on ES, or what, I don't know which one this is, or NQ or ES, the other one has already swept this high, right? So you have a bearish divergence. Once that, now I'm not looking to take any trade, right? Until we get that sell-off, right? That's validating the SMT. So we have bearish SMT at the highs after sweeping that bigger time frame buy side at level as well. We get that move to the downside. This is validating, all right? And then that's your internal break of structure. This would be your fair value gap that you take the trade off of right here. I need to get better at that. I didn't enter on for first fair value gap because I like to see more confirmation, but I should have noted that SMT meant I was good to enter. This was NQ. Yeah. Again, the one things I like to say as well is if you have an SMT, you can get away with taking faster entries, and not faster by meaning time wise, but less structure wise. Like for example, that specific trade. Let's take a look at ES actually, or NQ, and we'll go over that. So right here, when we see NQ doesn't take this high, but ES does take this high, and keep in mind we just swept this buy side level as well, this SMT needs to be validated, right, by taking this low with displacement, right? So we take this low, we get some nice move, we get a fair value gap. Again, fair value gap equals displacement, right? Displacement creates fair value gaps. We pull back to this fair value gap. This would be the short right here. Targeting here. Not unless I get displacement. Okay, so the only way that you can enter off SMT is if it fits with the overall bias. Like, this trade is a little bit more risky. This trade is a little bit more risky because we haven't yet broke structure to the downside on a bigger time frame, right? Because this would be our break of structure on a bigger time frame. But you're trusting this SMT, which honestly, this is good risk to reward on this because you're taking that that short here, right? Putting your stop somewhere up here. You get really nice risk reward on this, right? 3 RR. Knew that was a little bit more risky. That's why I entered 5 micros instead of 30 and still got 28 points. So she played out well. Nice. Yeah, again, beautiful execution as well. If you're feeling a little bit, if you feel like you're taking a quicker entry or a less probable trade, just enter your size because the best thing that we want to, again, when we're focused on money, we're always going to over leverage. We're always going to try to make, quick money. But when you're focused on gaining experience, building confidence, or learning, if I see a trade that I'm like, hey, this kind of looks good. I'm not completely sure on this, but this kind of looks good. Let me enter very, very small size just so I can get the feel of putting on a trade, right? Because when you actually enter and you can see a trade play out, if you get stopped, you're not going to care. You're losing, that money doesn't really, it's fine. You're okay with losing that, but the thing that you want to do is the actual action of execution, right? You're putting risk on the table, you're accepting it, and you're watching the trade play out, right? And if it works out, that's great. You're ending up building confidence with that specific model. And the more that you do this, the more that you're going to become consistently more confident with trading that model. So absolutely great execution, brother. And good risk management, absolutely. If there's break of structure on the 5 minute with average size for value gap, how do you know which gap on the 1 minute to enter when something, there could be multiple? Because the 1 minute has to get respected of the 5 minute first. So, or the 5 minute has to get respected before the 1 minute. So, for example, if I'm looking at this, right, let's say we're looking at a 5 minute, right? We have buy side, we end up coming up, boom, sweeping buy side, we get displacement to the downside, sweep internal, and then we get a big move to the upside or downside. Okay, what am I looking for here? This is let's say this is a 15-minute chart, right? This is a 15-minute chart, right? So, what am I looking for? I'm looking to see us come back to discount of this range, right? So somewhere up here, there's probably a fair value gap that I'm looking to take my entry or maybe a breaker block, whatever it is, right? This is where I'm looking for price to go for me to enter. Now, am I automatically taking shorts here? No. Why? Because for me to actually validate this bias in my trade, my stop would have to be up here, which means, again, this is a 15-minute chart. Normally, when I'm zoomed in, my stop loss is going to be like here when I actually enter on a 1 minute, right? So if I'm risking this much, I'm going to lose a significantly much amount. Now, you can adjust your size. If you want to take a bigger time frame model, do it, but adjust your size. But I want to get the best possible entry, right? Which means I then wait for internal model. So when market comes up, this is what I wait for. We form structure coming into this area, and I look to see a rejection. So we come up, initially reject, but continue to hold bearish fair value gaps, or bullish fair value gaps, right? Now, once we come up and we sweep internal liquidity, right? Now we have a high that we're taking. This gives me now more confidence. So if we end up rejecting now, I 100% am looking to take a short. So let's say this. Boom, displacement to the downside. We end up putting a low in or whatever it is. Boom, this is my short right here, right? Because we end up sweeping. We're using that bigger time frame bearish model on a 15-minute to then look in a 1 minute to see the exact same model, right? Buy side swept, displacement to downside, fair value gap. That's where I take my trade, right? And this will get you the best possible entries, like you're a fucking sniper, the best possible risk, and the best possible, probability, because you're overlapping models. And again, this would be low-hanging fruit. And then think about it this way. you get to hold your trade knowing that this low being taken is so likely because you're trading a bigger time frame model. Again, that initial low, what do we like to call that? We like to call that low-hanging fruit, right? That is low-hanging fruit. So we know that market's most likely going to come and take that initial low that we put in earlier, right? So this low right here that we get to put in from this initial model, and then we end up retracing back. If we're trading a 1 minute here, it is a no-brainer that that low gets taken, right? If we pull back, why is everything, it's like, so it's a no-brainer that when we pull back to this fair value gap, we're going to come back and take this low. So when I zoom in and I'm like, hey, I get to take the, a model where this thing's fucked. If I get to take, a trade here and I get to put my risk, look at what my risk becomes. My risk becomes now entering off this fair value gap. My first price target is now this low, and my stop becomes whatever that recent high is. This now becomes insanely good risk to reward because you're using a bigger time frame bias, waiting for that bias to get validated on a smaller time frame and waiting for a smaller time frame entry. That's why I can lose 3 or 4 times in a row if I have to, and 1 trade, 2 trades can make that back and I'll still make money. Because I'm patient enough to wait for high quality setups like this when I can get bigger time frame bias, and then I zoom in and I align that bias with whatever smaller time frame is. Make sense? We use the term overlapping models a lot, and I want you guys to really understand what I mean when I say that, and that's exactly what I mean about overlapping models. Not even in a lick arse way. This guy teaches better than anyone in this space that I've ever seen. He ain't about just taking our money, man. Literally wants us to become better traders. This group is a gem. Much love, Alex. That means a lot, brother. I will definitely upload today's sessions. All right. Let's go over what we're looking at going into tomorrow. So let's clear up the charts a little bit here. All right. So let's look at the overall chart, because now this is possibly telling us we might maybe see some more upside here. Why is that? Well, we have swept this initial low. Now, I do want to see us go lower. And I still am bearish, but I am maybe starting to lean a little bit more bullish. And the reason is because we have swept the sell side level and we're now starting to get displacement through the upside. Now, looking at the 1 hour, we have kind of displaced through this high now. We're starting to move up. So going into tomorrow, if we continue to break through this fair value gap, I would want to see this possibly become inverse, and this high now becomes the draw on liquidity, this buy side level. So what could I potentially see? Maybe pull back to this 1 hour fair value gap, maybe even come back down to here, sweep this low, and then bounce. So depending on what happens in the overnight session, is going to really form my bias going into tomorrow. But for now, I'm going to be a little bit more bullish, and I would like to see this high get taken. Now, you do want to pay attention. Look at what this chart, what does this look like here? Somebody in chat, tell me what this looks like. Somebody tell me. Liquidity-wise, what does this tell me? Yep, low resistance liquidity run. Low resistance liquidity run. Notice, there is really no significant high here on a bigger time frame. When I zoom out to a 4 hour, notice that every high here is very stacked together, right? We have buy side here. We have buy side here that got swept. We have buy side right here. We have another high right here, right? What does this mean? This now becomes low resistance liquidity run, which means if we end up coming to take any of these highs, it is much more likely that that high gets ran through to go to whatever the external high is, which becomes this. So if we see a continuation push to the upside, I'm possibly expecting to be very cautious taking shorts at these highs. Now, I will look to take shorts because we can absolutely still reject this and go lower. But if we go through this, we can confidently expect to see the drawn liquidity become whatever the external high is, which is this one right here. So going into tomorrow, I want to see this high get taken. We'll look to see what happens. If we don't end up coming into that high, then I will be bearish. But a lot of my bias is going to depend on what happens in the overnight session. So let's take a look at ES as well. Again, pretty much the exact same thing on ES. Notice we're now starting to break to the upside. We have some nice highs now put in. Would want to see this now pull back to discounted fair value. I'm going to keep that in, actually. Do want to look at the 4 hour here as well. Notice we're starting to break to the upside. Now, keep in mind, we are forming SMT, actually. We are now forming SMT at the lows because NQ has taken that low. ES has not taken that low. This is now the first time where we're starting to get that displacement to the upside. So again, similar thing. We have buy side, internal, and external resting here. Look to see this fair value gap get ran through, possibly. Again, a lot of it depends on what happens in the overnight session, if we continue to hold that or not. If we end up breaking through this in the overnight session, we could expect that the draw to probably be this high. Any questions? We already talked about the CL trade. I'll post the session if you want to go back. All right, guys. Can you go over the second oil trade when it swept the equal highs? I didn't take that trade, but we can go over it, yeah. Now, I wouldn't really have looked to take that short. It wouldn't be bad. It actually wouldn't be that bad, but one thing about noticing kind of where we are right now is a lot of the time when we're in this range and we get that initial move up to take these highs, the macro's already done its job. And a lot of the time after this gets swept, we're going to see some sort of consolidation and we're going to sit in this range. And notice we actually sold off. This would have been a winning trade, but we just continue to sit in this range the rest of the day. But we will look to see if there was an entry there. I think there was. So after sweeping that, what am I looking for? Displacement to the downside. We kind of, yeah, that'd probably be it right there, I would say. This is where we get our first low put in. We're looking to see it move to the downside. We get a nice follow through here. Pull back to fair value gap. That would have been your short right here. Stop would have probably been like here. First target would have been discount of whatever that range is. Would you say New York Times sessions are the most volume, or can we trade? Yeah, I would say New York is the most volume. Can you talk about that huge sell? This one right here, I have no clue what this was. The market's just doing its thing, or there was maybe news, but that was probably just market doing its thing. All right, guys. That is all I have for you guys tonight. Hopefully you learned something from tonight's session. We got a lot done. Hopefully you learned from those past trades. Again, totally fine taking those trades that we took. Whoever took that CL trade, congrats. And I'll see you all tomorrow morning. If anybody has any further questions, again, always feel free to just at me in the Discord with, screenshots if you want me to review trades or whatever it is, and I'll get back to you guys. So enjoy the rest of your night. I will see you all tomorrow morning.